Hi, everybody. Back with us again today is famed, with good reason, famed Trends Forecaster Gerald Celente. And today's topic is exploring a theme that he's been putting out for years now and more so in recent months. And that is when all else fails, they take you to war. Gerald, welcome. Thanks for being with us. And is this an example of your warning that when all else fails, they take you to war? In other words, have we been wanting this war?
Well, go back to a thing called the stock market crash in 1929, followed by the Great Depression, followed by war. Right. Go back to 2000. You know, back in the day, USA Today, when it was a big newspaper, used to run my top trends every year.
Right.
And in December 2000, they ran the headline, 2001 won't be our year, Trendseer says. We put the new trends out in December for the new year.
Right.
And we warned that a wave of anti-Americanism was sweeping the globe and Americans wouldn't be safe at home or abroad. Go back to March of 2000, the dot-com bust. The day before 9/11, the NASDAQ was down 66%. The nation was in a deep recession. And by the way, in the Trends Journal in October 1999, we said that the dot-com bust would happen by the second quarter of 2000. The equity markets have been way overvalued. Go back to January of this year, week after week after week after week, except for the last week, woof, woof, woof. S&P, Dow, NASDAQ down sharply. Then all of a sudden it starts building up with the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. And you can see this thing building. So who provoked it? Again, I want to make this 100% clear. I am totally opposed to the war that the Russians have launched. I want to make that clear. I also want to make it clear, as you well know, getting the Trends Journal for many, many years, go back to 2014. The United States overthrew took out Yanukovych in Ukraine. We wrote about it in detail back then when it was happening. Right. This is a quote. This is from the Trends Journal, February 2015. In early February 2014, a recording was leaked of Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, Victoria Nuland, telling Jeffrey Pyatt, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, that the UN was on board to help glue, that's a quote, the plan to replace Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych with Alexei Yatsenyuk. Quote, Yats is the guy, end quote, Nuland informed Pyatt, who urged her to move quickly because, quote, the Russians will be working behind the scenes to torpedo the deal. Fuck the EU, Nuland told Pyatt. Exactly, he replied. Shortly thereafter, Yanukovych was overthrown and Yats became president. Ukraine agreed to Nuland's demands to make, quote, a new deal with the IMF, which was, quote, necessary for the long-term economic health of the country. Yet, the new Western-leaning Kiev government did not represent the Russian-speaking Ukrainians in the East and South who had voted Yanukovych into office. Remember, this is 2015. 1 year later, Ukraine is racked by civil war and is in depression. The US and EU blame Russia for the destabilization because of its support for the Ukrainian separatists. And as punishment, the US pushed the EU to impose trade sanctions against Russia. Russia retaliated with trade sanctions against Europe. And we write, there is no end in sight for the civil war. Kiev has been militarily humiliated by the Russian separatists. Okay?
Right.
Yeah. A total overthrow by the United States. Now let's fast forward. Let's go back to January of this year. Again, all detailed in the Trends Journal. U.S. fighter bomb is 14 miles off the Russian border. Huge NATO, U.S. naval military drills off the Russian coast. Let's go back to the facts. Again, we took them from the National Security Archives. The deal was made when the Gorbachev was breaking up the Soviet Union, that NATO would not expand any further. The quote from James Baker under Bush was that we will not move 1 inch further. There were 16 countries in NATO back then. And then that murderous little lowlife, arrogant scum, Bill Clinton, yeah, the guy that bombed the hell out of Iraq, and people could look it up, Madeleine Albright, or not all that bright, on the UN ambassador at the time on CBS 60 Minutes, telling Leslie Stahl that the sanctions that Bill Clinton put on Iraq, plus the bombings that have killed over 500,000 Iraqi children. And Leslie Stahl asks, was that worth the price? And Madeleine Albright said, yes, it was.
Right.
That Bill Clinton started bringing NATO countries, other countries into NATO. From 16, it is now at 30. Bush did it, Obama did it, and they keep on doing it. So now what if the Russians were up in Canada with missiles aimed at the United States, and the Chinese were down in Mexico with missiles pointed into America?
Or Khrushchev's missiles in Cuba, 90 miles off our shore. We almost went to war with the Soviet Union over that. Now the shoe's on the other foot.
And why did it end? Because there was a guy by the name of John F. Kennedy that said, okay, we'll make a deal. We'll pull our missiles out of Turkey. And that's why they put them in there.
Right.
And it was over. But no, we're not going to pull back from NATO. Oh, going back to the deal, why they overthrew Yanukovych? Yeah. Because he made a deal with the EU and the IMF because they were in deep debt. And they're going to join the EU. And Putin said, no, I got a better deal for you. I'll give you a better interest rate, and we'll cut your gas prices. Okay, we'll go with you. You got us a better deal. And that's when they overthrew the nation. And talking about JFK, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind.
Right.
That's where we're at.
But Gerald, let me ask you this. The American media and the American talking heads on TV, these retired generals and all these so-called experts, they're all saying that NATO isn't a real issue, that Ukraine wasn't going to join it anyway. So Putin is just using that as an excuse to invade and expand, reconstitute the Soviet Empire. Does Putin have a real concern about NATO membership for Ukraine, or was that on the back burner anyway? So it's not a legitimate reason to invade.
That was one of the main reasons. And again, you could read the quotes that the guy Zelinski, who's the was it president or prime minister?
Yeah.
Was it prime minister or
president
of Ukraine? He said when they met, he said, you have to abide by the Minsk deal that was put in place when when the Civil War broke out. And he said, oh, no, I'm not going to do it. Zelinski won. And by the way, you know who Zelinski was before he did this? He was a comedian.
Right.
And you know what his role was as a comedian? To play president of Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what he enacted in his skits on TV came to fruition in real life there. And I understand he was backed by one of the billionaire oligarchs in Ukraine.
Yeah. So you got a comedian in charge.
Yeah.
And so anyway, no, and just to make this really clear, why would anybody with a brain bigger than a pea listen to U.S. military authorities, generals, or any of them when you guys haven't won a war since World War II, and you've killed millions of people. You're full of crap. You're losers and you can't win anything. So save your crap for somebody else that's as stupid as you are.
So Gerald,
how would anybody believe these people? They lied us into, that's the pot calling the kettle black, by the way.
Yeah.
How terrible it is what Putin's doing. And again, I made it clear I'm totally against it.
Right.
But it's okay. We could lie you into the Iraq war. You know, that's Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Phil Giraldi, one of my friends, former top guy in the CIA, quit because the CIA guys knew these were lies. And that little clown boy Tenet, that little suck-ass little piece of shit, knew it was a lie, and they kept selling the lie. And he quit. You could go to Phil Giraldi, Judge Napolitano, and look up, go to Napolitano's site and look at the latest interview Giraldi did.
So Gerald, while you're making it clear that you don't support the invasion and all the mayhem that involves, at the same time, would you agree with critics who say that Putin was pushed to this point because all his pleas for holding back NATO and for negotiating fell on deaf ears for many years, so finally he was forced to make the move? Would you agree with that?
I would say he was forced, but not to make this move. He could have moved into the Eastern Donbass region, and you know, it could have been that. It could, you know, again, you know, I don't agree with the bombs away. You know, I'm totally opposed to that, but I understand why he did it.
And what about all these interpretations that what he's really doing is this is the first stage of reconstituting the Soviet Empire?
I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. And again, look what you got missiles on Poland shooting at him over there.
Yeah.
You know, so would that cause them to go into it? What would they look at the United States when they had missiles in Cuba? All the generals wanted to invade Cuba and blow it up.
Right.
But that was okay. Again, the hypocrisy. Look at the wars. Look at that Nobel piece of crap prize winner, Barack Obama. Assad has to go. Oh, yeah, we only kill what? There's only about 500,000 Syrians, over about 650,000 Syrians dead.
Right.
Gaddafi has to go. Oh, you destroyed Libya, the richest country in Africa, where the people had more benefits and rights than most of the world. Oh, yeah. How about nobody's talking about the Yemen war, brought to you by Barack Obama and that other clown, arrogant boy, Blinken, our U.S. Secretary of State. He was the Assistant Secretary of State. They announced the Yemen war in 2015 from Washington, D.C., the Saudis did. Blinken went over there to help with, quote, intelligence as the United States was refueling the Saudi jets so they could bomb the hell out of Yemen, which is the worst humanitarian crisis on earth, and not a peep from the prostitutes. Instead, the headlines in all the papers now, civilians being killed in Ukraine, civilians being Ukraine. How about all the civilians Americans killed in Iraq and Syria and Libya? Not a word, Americans killing civilians.
Yeah, and those weren't war crimes, according to the talking heads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I also thought that he was going to stay in eastern Ukraine, but did he make the wider invasion to defang western Ukraine, to stop bothering eastern Ukraine and to stop encroaching on Russian interests? So was there some logic in that, where he had to invade the whole country to demilitarize Ukraine and prevent incursions against Russia?
It's Putin's belief that Ukraine is part of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
If you read what he said, and I read his entire speech, he goes back to Lenin. He's not a communist. He hated Lenin. And Lenin was the one that broke up Ukraine. Khrushchev, when he came in, he was Ukrainian, he separated. Right. Ukraine was part of Russia for what? About 200 and something years under Catherine the Great. Yeah. Crimea goes back to 1735. This would be like, you know, I mean, so that's what he's saying. So his belief is that Ukraine is part of Russia. That's his belief.
Yeah. Well, how do you think this is going now? We're making moves with the sanctions on the Russian oligarchs that apparently have some sway in Russia. And they're talking about Putin being overthrown because the oligarchs are having their yachts confiscated. Do you think that could happen?
No, no, no. Putin's a fighter. I mean, he's a martial artist. I mean, the guy's a fighter. These guys aren't fighters. You look at the oligarchs, one of the guys who, he's as big as his yacht. I mean, they're not going to take him out. This guy was with the, the security. What's the name of the
KGB?
KGB. No, they're not going to take him out.
Well, yeah, but with the sanctions that we're imposing now, will that cripple Russia into the future, or is he going to be able to weather this hit and recover? In other words, how damaging will this be to the Russian economy with all these sanctions that we're pouring out?
As I just read to you from our Trends Journal from February 2015, 1 year, the US and EU blame Russia for the destabilization because of its support of Ukrainian separatists. And as punishment, the US pushed the EU to impose trade sanctions against Russia. Didn't do anything. You know who the trade sanctions are hurting? You, me, and everybody listening. Hey, it's fun to fill up your car with a tank of gas, isn't it? It's great, huh? Yeah, you don't mind paying all that money. You think the rich people give a damn in Russia or anywhere else that the price of gas? They could care less. Oh, how about the copper prices? Oh, they just hit an all-time high. Throw aluminum in there too. Palladium. Oh, you know those things you need for catalytic converters? Oh, Russia only supplies the world with 40% of it. Oh, all you Europeans over there, your gas prices are really high over there. 40% of all Europe's gas comes from Russia. And Germany, that you're sending weapons over there to fight? Yeah, only 50% of your gas comes from there, but you cut it off now.
So what are you saying, that these sanctions, these heavy sanctions, are not going to work against Russia economy?
No, well, look, I do a podcast with Judge Napolitano every Wednesday on your Gerald Celente on the YouTube channel. We did one on Wednesday. Judge Napolitano, which is a top to me judicial authority in America, he points out, he said, Gerald, he said they put sanctions on Cuba back in 1962.
Right.
Did it bring down Cuba? No. You know who it brought down? The people.
Yeah.
And that's all this is doing. Every American, get this in your head. The sanctions only hurt us. They don't do a damn thing. Oh, how about the Iranian sanctions? Oh, they've only been going on now since about 1979. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And Iran, the whole country's gone. And America won. Right? What a bunch of BS that would be. Who's suffering? The Iranian people. It doesn't change the leadership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Russia is actually in the driver's seat concerning the energy that it supplies to Germany, to Europe, and we're still importing Russian oil. So, I mean, we really can't counter that. And
no.
So, yeah.
No. Again, look at the price at the pump. As we're speaking, Brent crude is now $113 a barrel. Go back to your Trends journals now. Oh, for about 2 years, we kept saying when Brent crude breaks above $100 a barrel and stays there, it's going to bring down the economy and bring down the equity markets.
Right.
If this stays where it is, it's over. It's not stagflation where you're going to have a stagnant economy and rising inflation, because inflation is going to go up really high now. It's dragflation. The economy is going to drag down and inflation is going to go up. As I said, when all else fails, they take you to war. People are buying this crap, by the way, and people have worked for me. I get so angry. You're reading the magazine Oh, this Putin's a maniac. Oh, yeah, he's crazier than Bush, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, he's crazier than Obama. No, he's more nuts than Clinton.
Yeah, and that's another thing now. That's another thing that they're spreading, that he's deranged, he's a maniac, he's paranoid.
Yeah.
I read the statement he made also that they claim was disjointed and full of paranoia. To me, it seemed quite logical what he laid out.
Yep.
But who actually reads the statement other than talking heads that interpret it for the public?
They don't even read it. They
Yeah.
don't even read it. They do the soundbite.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the type of the propaganda that goes on both sides, but I mean, our side that's supposed to be free of that. I mean, more and more the media is controlled, less and less real information is getting to the public. And Gerald, as a journalist for most of my adult life, I consider that one of the real existential threats to America, because if you control the media, you control the people, and there's no recourse to get real information to the people. So this is serious. And it's not being addressed by any of the major media. They're ignoring, they're going along with it, as a matter of fact. They become propagandists and cheerleaders rather than objective reporters. They talk about the media being controlled in Russia, the same thing here. Maybe not as obvious, but it's the same thing.
Let's go back to that murderous, lying slime, Bill Clinton, that gave us NAFTA, that took our jobs and brought them to Mexico.
Right.
And brought China into the World Trade Organization and took our jobs to China. He deregulated the Federal Communications Act in 1996.
Right.
And now you have, what, 5 or 6 companies that control about 92% of all the media?
Right.
Yeah. And then let's go back to the Iraq War. Go to fairness and accuracy in reporting. They brought nobody, 1% of the people they brought on that were against the war, the Iraq War, when it began. 1%, and before it began, only 10%. Remember that guy, Phil Donahue? They took him off MSNBC because he was against the war.
Right. Well,
now let's talk about the COVID war. Yeah. If you have any question about a vaccination, if you have any question about the mask mandates, social distancing, putting plexiglass in, washing your hands, or sanitizing them before you masturbate, you're off the media.
Yeah.
You're blackballed. You're talking about Russia? How about America? Look what they've done. I know Dr. Joseph Mercola, this brilliant man, brilliant, took him off. Millions of followers, took him off YouTube. One after another, take you off YouTube. Are you talking about Russia?
Yeah, and you were taken off major media when you spoke out against the Iraq War.
Iraq War and the Afghan War. Yep. Yeah. I said if Alexander the Great couldn't pull it off, if the British at the height of the British Empire into the Valley of Death, Road to 600 couldn't win, if Russia couldn't beat them, what makes you think America's going to win this war? Yeah. Well, you're anti-American. Get the hell out of here. You haven't won a war since World War II. What the hell are you talking to? And that's the other thing. This is the other propaganda going out there. How the Ukrainians are defeating the Russians, and how this thing's only going on for a week. America's in Afghanistan for 20 damn years. Where the hell are you shitheads? How come you weren't talking about that? 20 years you're there. And you couldn't beat 89,000 guys with rifles.
Mm-hmm. Well, also according to some non-mainstream observers of this, the reason why the Russian advance is supposedly slowed, because Putin is trying to avoid civilian casualties, because he doesn't want the population to hate him after he imposes his own government. So, according to what I've been reading, that Putin has told his soldiers not to fire on civilians if they could help it, and that's what's causing the advance to slow.
Yeah, and again, it's only a week. It's nothing. And anybody thinks that they're going to beat the Russians, ask a guy by the name of Napoleon, that left Poland with 420,000 troops, came back with 10,000 in his attack of Moscow. Ask a guy by the name of Hitler who launched Operation Barbarossa
Right.
that only killed over 20 million Russians. Who were the first ones in Germany to end World War II? The Russians.
Right. Right.
Oh, and by the way, the Russians invaded and occupied Ukraine, huh? How about the Israelis that invade and occupy Palestinian land? Oh, no, Celente, you're an anti-Semite. God gave them that land.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a bunch of hypocrisy.
And you notice in the media, there's never a Palestinian stating his side of the story.
Never.
Years ago, they had some of that on the major networks. Now you never see any response from the Palestinians.
Never.
So, but getting back to the economy now. So how severely and how long is this going to affect the American economy? What's going on?
It's going to be devastating. This could be the Greatest Depression. This is devastating. You're going to have to raise interest rates. Now, it's going to be on the 15th, they're going to decide how much they're going to go up. They were talking 50 basis points.
Mhm.
Now they're back to 25 basis points.
Right.
These, again, they're lying people. They said that inflation was only temporary, then it was transitory.
Right.
And then it gets to be proper. Maybe they made it transgendatory. I mean, they're making this crap up. They knew it was real. They liars kept saying in the US and the EU that our inflation rate was 2%. When it goes over that, we'll raise it. We'll raise inflation. We'll raise the interest rates. The interest rate, the inflation rate's been what, 7.5%?
Yeah.
And they haven't raised it. And they raised it, by the way, they haven't raised it since 2018. And when they did start raising it, they raised it when inflation was 1.8%. They're doing this to artificially boost the markets and the economy. Now, they're going to have to raise them. When they raise them, this economy is going down. And by the way, all across Europe, as we're speaking, because of the skyrocketing inflation, central banks are pushing interest rates up, pushing them up, pushing them hungry, one after another.
Well, Gerald, I'm not sure if you know what you're talking about, because according to the latest job report, everything is fine. The jobs added, 678,000 added in last month. It was expected only 440,000. The jobless rate is now 3.8%, down from the 4% in January. Labor force participation is 62.3%. That ticked up a bit. Wage growth, 5.1%, down a bit from 5.7%. But overall, things are looking up according to the official government statistics.
Well, again, those jobs have been created because remember, we also said in the Trends Journal, in the beginning of the year, first week of January, that the COVID war would end by late March, mid-April. COVID was winding down. We said this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, these jobs are being created, but how many people left the workforce?
Yeah.
It's
It's actually the jobs that they're returning to jobs. They're not new jobs being created.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the other deal. They give that phony number of the employment number.
Mm-hmm.
Once you stop collecting unemployment and you haven't found a job,
Not unemployed anymore. Yeah.
not unemployed anymore. Oh, you're talking about Russia? You're talking about propaganda? Oh, and the inflation? What did housing prices go up? What, 18%, 19% last year?
No.
That's not inflationary. We don't put that into the numbers.
Right.
Oh, and the prices of steak are going up? No. People are eating ground beef now, so that's not inflationary.
Yeah. That's a value added thing that they're claiming. Also, do they include gas prices in these inflation?
I'm not sure. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they have the separate one for energy and fuel. Yeah. But again, this is going to go down big. The numbers don't mean anything. If this war keeps ratcheting up and they keep these sanctions up and inflation keeps going up, inflation is going to be the killer. Go back to the panic of 2008.
Yeah.
That's what started, gas prices started going off the roof. boom, crash.
Yeah.
And they're doing it again. The sanctions are only hurting everybody listening. Wheat prices going up, nickel, one after another, one after another.
And, because Biden is so attached to the people who got him elected, the progressive crowd, the political correct crowd, all these groups, he's not going to reverse his orders on shutting down gas production in the U.S., correct?
He might.
He might reverse when it gets that.
Oh, no, he won't. No, he's not going to shut it down. Excuse me. No, he won't shut it down. No way.
No, I'm saying he's not going to ease up on his previous shutdown of new drilling, the fracking, and all that, because the people who got him elected won't stand for it. So in other words, he's not going to increase America's gas production, despite his prices.
He might. If it gets really out of hand, he might. We'll say this is an emergency. We're going to do it temporarily.
Now, well, I noticed they're pivoting away from all these positions that they're losing polls on. So now he's talking about we have to fund the police, we have to secure the border. Yeah. The border is secure, by the way, but we're going to about all these positions that they previously took a hard stance on. They're now trying to give lip service in the opposite direction.
They're politicians. Anybody to me that believes a Republican or Democrat and supports both of these, as I say, they're a crime syndicate. By their deeds you shall know them. They steal our money and give them to too big to fail. Oh, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, they're too big to fail. You're just a piece of crap. Oh, and murderers. Look at all the wars they've started. Again, they're a crime syndicate.
Well, wrapping it up now, Gerald, who's making money off of this war? Who's benefiting?
Oh, who? A guy by the name of Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, who hated war because he saw the destruction of it, warns the American people in his farewell address in, I think it was January 17th, or January 21st. I always get the dates mixed up, 1961, just before JFK's coming in, that the military-industrial complex is robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. That's who's making the money. And look at the defense budget, $778 billion after you just lost the Afghan war. And by the way, there was a guy by the name of George Washington, president of the United States, a real fighter, Washington crossing the Delaware, a real fighter, not like a little Obama that couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, not like a little Bush, not like a little Biden, not like a little Trump. None of these guys are fighters, but boy, oh boy, did they start wars. Bush, little Georgie Bush, that guy, little nothing. What was Washington? Warning the American people not to get involved in foreign entanglements. And another man by the name of Smedley Butler, war's a racket. The most decorated Marine in history when he wrote this back in the 1930s, warning about, by the way, World War II. Right. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which, you asked the question, the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. He goes on to write, goes on to say, beautiful deals were painted for our boys who were sent out to die. This was the war to end all wars. Talking about World War I. This was the war to make the world safe for democracy. No one mentioned to them as they marched away that they are going and they're dying would mean huge war profits. No one told these American soldiers that they may be shot down by bullets made by their own brothers here. No one told them that the ships on which they were going to cross might be torpedoed by submarines built with United States patents. They were just told it was to be a glorious adventure.
Yeah, and nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed.
And he said that they fought to make these countries safe, not for democracy, but for the companies that control the economy in those countries.
You got it. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
He said, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service. And during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of a half dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for Americans' fruit companies in 1903. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was to operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated in 3 continents.
Yeah, that says it all.
That says it all.
Nothing's changed. Gerald Celente, who also publishes the Trends Journal, quite a magazine, so full of information. And of course, you're famous in your own right for forecasting trends over the years that have been accurate with all the ups and downs of the economy. Gerald, thanks once again for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for all that you do.